Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we find ourselves in a post-apocalyptic desert landscape where we're members of one of the few good-minded communities. Now you'll be in one of many different scenarios, in either a cooperatively or a semi-cooperatively way, exploring, moving, charging, sneaking, attacking, collecting, building, and trading your way to that scenario's unique victory condition. Under Our Sun is for 1 to 4 players, or up to 6 players with the expansion. It takes 1 to 3 hours to play, depending on the scenario chosen. It's for ages 14 and up, and published by Tabletopper Games. Now it's being crowdfunded right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a crowdfunding preview, so all the art and components you see here are not final. These are prototypes. To see the most up-to-date art and components, check the link in the description of this video. Also, this is not a playthrough or an official rules video. This is just a high-level overview, just to give you some ideas of how the game works. Now, the game can be played cooperatively or semi-cooperatively. Now, the semi-cooperative is only recommended for 3 or more players, but the way it works is essentially you'd have the amount of players plus 4, there'd be this many survivor cards, and then be 1 of the 3 Son of Liberty cards mixed in. And now, so the survivors, they not only could win by fulfilling the mission objective, but they could also win by killing the Son of Liberty character once they're revealed. And the Son of Liberty's objective will be on their card, but since you're drawing for more than the number of players of survivors, it is possible, even when playing the semi-cooperative mode, that everybody is just a standard survivor, and then there's just paranoia going on. Now, at the beginning of the game, each player is going to be able to select their character, like a scout, thick skin, a veteran, or medic, and they all have different attributes and different dice that they'll be using to do different skill checks, like attacking, strength, skill, and stealth or secret. And each of these characters comes with their own miniature, but again, check the link in the description of this video to see all the most up-to-date sculpts. And so your character's going to get a bunch of health there. They're also going to have some water they're going to be drinking throughout. They're going to be managing their actions here, their fitness. They're going to be getting some starting items and or gear. There are some starter ones, and you'll be spending some action points at the beginning of the game to get these. And there's places that you'll be holding either items like this or resources to do different things. Now, this prototype copy here is in German, so at certain spots I'm going to be showing you some Google translated images of some of these cards and such. Now you'll select a scenario, and this one is search and rescue. This one actually has 4 parts. So each of these cards has, at the beginning there's some setup, there's some introduction of the stories, what's going on, and then it has some certain targets as to what you need to do to get there, and then your goal. Like for example, to get to part 2, you're going to be finding the settler by exploring the surroundings. If you've uncovered the goal plan part, then you read part 2. So you're going to be doing different things and trying to get to the next part of the mission, and that will get you towards the end of it and hopefully for success. Now the game is played over multiple rounds. Each round goes through 4 different phases. You've got preparation, you've got morning, afternoon, and then night. Now the preparation is skipped in the first round, but you start on this tile here in New Haven. I have 2 characters here. There's some resources like food, there's some resources like water. This one also has sort of a trading post there. Now at the beginning of the morning, you're going to flip up the sun deck, and this deck will have different effects. This one's a mild, so there's really no effect, but there might be other harsher things to deal with, like that sun is beating down, and each person would have to consume a water. And so you would have to remove this. Now this is very important because water is an important resource in the game. It's great for drinking, you need it. It's also great for trading. But if you ever are out of water you need to drink, for every water you need to drink after that, you need to lose some health. And of course that's not good because you don't want to, have to be revived or possibly die. We'll go over that later. Now also at the beginning of the morning, each player needs to drink a water. So in this case we had to drink 2 because of that event. And then you're going to take some actions. You'll fill up your action track here. And as you take actions, you're going to be going down, and then it will be another player's turn. Now, one of the things you can do, if you're on the same tile as a character, you could trade for an action point. And you can trade, resources and things like that. But you can also trade with some of the trading posts, because Lawrence here is in the New Haven where you start. And there's different things. You could trade resources. There's different things that are worth like water is the most coveted resource, but you could trade, 1 food is worth 3 water and things like that. All the different resources that are these can be traded back and forth for water. Of course, you can trade resources here. You can also get different items. So there's different items that he may have. This is somewhat randomly distributed at the beginning of the game. They each have an ability and a cost in water, but of course you can trade things to get the right resources. You can also sell back some of the items that you have at half the value. You can also have Lawrence dismantle them, and you'll actually get resources back in order to trade them, which is pretty kind of thematic there. So there's different things you can do at the trading post. You can't do this to Lawrence, but other trading posts you might come to, and in addition to having items and stuff, these are ones that you could actually try to steal resources or rob them for certain things. But if you don't, if you're not successful, you'll end up, bad things will happen. You're gonna fight and things like that. Now, speaking of the items I have a bandage, which basically will allow me to heal 2 health, and I have a rope that will help me get through tougher terrain a little bit easier. Now, one thing to point out here is that with the attacking and strength, there's different dice in the game. Now, a green die is going to have some successes on there. And you actually have a 62.5% chance of getting at least 1 success. There's a yellow die where it's basically 50%, and then there's a blue die that's like 37%. And different skills and things like that will have you roll these dice for successes. And interestingly enough, the scout here is not great at attacking. They have a green die, which is good, but there's only 1 of them. And strength is, if they're doing a strength test, it's 1 yellow, so not very good. And then we have, skills and some stealth or sneaking. But other characters, like in this case, Thickskin, has 2 dice for attacking and 2 dice for strength, but he's not very good at, sneaking around and stuff like that. So thematically, you're going to be better or worse at certain things, which is why you're going to need to cooperate quite a bit in the game. Now, one of the things you could do is explore. And to explore, you can explore any spot that's adjacent that doesn't already have a tile that's there. You'll draw one from a tile stack. Let's say we were the scout, we wanted to explore here. Now, what this means is that there is an enemy here that will spawn at some point, but you're also going to fill it up with some resources. And I would have taken down my action tracker down 1 because it cost me 1 action point. Now, you could also use action points to move, and this tells you how much it costs, 1 action point, but most of them cost more than that. So I could spend 1 to move here, but when I move here, I know there's an enemy there, and it is going to appear, and since this person isn't that great at attacking, maybe we want to try to sneak onto this tile. Now, to sneak, it's going to cost actions of this plus 1. So in this case, it's going to be 2 to move over in there. However, we would need to make a stealth check by rolling the dice based on the check there to be able to do that. And if we were successfully able to do it, we would be able to sneak and spend those action points to move there. Now, however, once we're here, anytime we want to take another action on here without making the enemy come out, we're going to have to do another stealth test. Now, if you fail in those stealth tests, then the enemy is going to come out anyway. So it's a way to try to get on and get things done, like grabbing resources, maybe exploring somewhere else without, triggering an enemy. So let's say in this case we tried to do another stealth check and it didn't work and the enemy showed up. So we would draw an enemy from the enemy deck. We put the character standee there. It has 3 hit points, and it also has a dice that it will roll depending on whether it's day or night. In this case, it's day, so it's going to have a green die, and we have a green die for attack from our there. So an initial round of combat doesn't count an extra action point. We're each just going to attack and counterattack at the same time, and both of us have hit each other. So I'm just going to count this by putting a tracker on like that. And of course, I'd be losing a health here. Now, if you ever get down to 2 health, you are wounded, 2 or less, and you would get a wounded marker. And now every time you roll a die, you need to roll the red die, and this will undo a success from a good die. So you want to get this back by healing and getting back at least to 3 health. Now, if you get all the way to 0 health, you are dead. However, within the next 3 sort of phases, so if you died on the day phase, there's then the afternoon, and then the night phase, and then if you're not revived by an AED by the end of the next day phase, then you are pretty much out of the game. So you got to find this item, you need to be able to get it, and you need to be able to revive somebody. So you do have some time if somebody dies to revive them, but you better be doing that quick. Sometimes you might find yourselves on tiles with multiple characters and you're all fighting the enemy. Then both of you are going to be able to roll dice and try to defeat them. Now, after that initial battle, if we want to attack, it does cost an action point to go ahead and attack. Or you might be like trying to dodge. Maybe if there's 2 of us here, I'm not a great attacker, I might spend an action point to dodge, but this one is going to be able to still try to attack because they're stronger. So you're trying to defeat this specific enemy right now. And if you do defeat the enemy, you'll be able to roll, if you want to a green die, or to see how many successes you get, and you'll be able to loot that person and get sometimes an item and things like a knife. Now again, you're managing your resources and your items here. So because I have a resource here, for example, I can't put an item here. So you got to be managing this throughout the game. Now, in general, that's how combat works. There's a lot more details and rules there, but I'm just showing you at a high level. And I mean, there's other things you could do, like you can retreat back to a different spot. But earlier I showed you I sort of snuck onto here, and you can also sort of recon. And so if you've been able to go in stealth mode and sneak on there, you can spend an action to recon, which is essentially seeing what the enemy is there without, provoking it and causing it to fight. And there's an opportunity to show you yet another enemy like the Crawler, who is a lot more dangerous, rolling 2 yellow dice now. So it's going to be more dangerous than the last one we just saw. And what makes this even more dangerous is that when it attacks, if it hits you, it could cause an infection on you. And if you're infected, then you're going to be losing health during the beginning of during the morning and the night phases, unless you get an antibiotic or a med kit. So this one has some lasting effects. Now, last thing about combat here is I snuck on here. We reconned and saw who this enemy was. I could do a sneak attack for 2 action points, assuming I'm in stealth mode there. And I can take 1 attack without any counter-attacking. And it does cost 2 action points. But then I'm exposed, right? And so now let's get away from combat and kind of showing you some of the other things in the game. So let's say it was the Thick-Skin's turn, and instead of just exploring and then moving, which again essentially is 2 points of action points, they just want to jump over here. And why would they want to do that? Well, it could possibly be cheaper, and since they're Thick-Skin, they're good at attacking, they don't really mind. So they're going to jump. They immediately have to jump here. Now you might notice that there's some spaces here. This shows you how many people could be there. And in an early example, I showed 2 characters and an enemy here, and that actually couldn't even happen on this tile. I was just kind of showing that example of fighting, which is a good thing to point out. That here, if you're in this tile, there really can't be another character fighting there. I was just showing you that for what happens with an example of fighting there. So here we could have up to 3 units here. Again, enemies can take those up sometimes. But this is 3, it would have been 3 action points to move into here, which would have been 1 to explore, then 3 to move in. That would have cost us 4 action points normally. But to jump, or charging it's called, just costs 2. So I spent 2 instead of 4, half the action points to jump in without knowing what was there. Again, the Thick-Skin's a better character to do that with than, say, the Scout, because if it is an attack, if there was an enemy here, it would immediately have the initial round of combat. And of course, whenever you put a tile, you can be putting some of these resources here as well. Now, another thing you can do on your turn is collecting. So for an action point, you can collect either an item or up to 2 resources here. And again, you're putting those resources on your board. And let's say, for example, we had the yellow and the orange. We could craft this for an action point, and we would now be able to put it here. This is empty, so we could put it there. And this is sort of a club. It's good for close combat, and you add a yellow die when attacking with the club. Now again, taking all these actions, you're going down here. We're still sort of in the day phase, and once you're out of action points, you literally can't do anything else during this phase. And keep in mind, I haven't been showing you some of these special abilities, but each of the characters have some of those. So like when sneaking, you get an extra green die for the check, and you can recon from an adjacent tile, if you will. But everyone has sort of special actions. You can also spend an action point if you're on a container. Now the final product will show you whether it's a skill or a strength test. And you'll use your dice specifically for what your character has. And if you are successful, you can get 2 cards from the loot deck and keep 1 of them. And there's ways to track that you've already opened them up so nobody else can open them. Now you might also go on spots that have an event card, and you'll draw a card from an entire event deck, and certain things will happen, like, hey, you find a bunker that's not really been looted yet, and so you're going to roll the die check, and you're going to check to see if you're going to get a pistol and 3 ammunition, or a rifle and ammunition, or a pump gun and 3 ammunition. So different things will happen with the events. And of course, once those are done, you can also cover those up as well. Now at the end of the day phase, once all the players have taken all their actions, you'll reset this back up. You go to the afternoon phase, you draw another sun card. Possibly you might need to do something depending on the event, but everyone's still going to need to drink another water. And speaking of this, let's talk about water for just a moment. Because we talked about collecting resources, but you can gain water, and if so, you would remove this. That would cost 1 action point, and they get to refill their water all the way. And then you would take actions as normal, and once you get to the end of that, after all players have gotten through all their actions, then you're going to go to the night phase. And in addition to drinking water as normal, you're now going to draw a night card. Now these night cards are typically pretty bad. This one's one of the few that aren't. Hey, it's a calm night, not too bad. Sometimes you might have panic attacks, which means you have 3 less actions this round. Sometimes there'll be enemies just attacking you where you're at, so you want to try to stay together right before the night phase. There's a lot of things that can happen, but I don't want to spoil a lot of the stuff in this deck. Now, normally you're going to draw that night card, but also every new tile that you go to, you're going to be drawing a night card. So you typically want to stay still a little bit. You want to rest at night, but you can build a camp. And if you have a camp with a campfire, then, you know, by the way, when you have the camp, you can store resources and things like that there. But you're also going to be able to be immune to any animal effects from nighttime cards and things like that. So it's a lot better to not really move around too much at night. Now, you don't draw any of those nighttime cards in New Haven. And you can also, when you start the fire, you can do it with either burning one wood resource, or you can use a card that has the keyword fire on it. So that is very dangerous because, again, between each player having to draw a night card, and if you go into a new tile, a new night card, unless of course you're just camped out on the camp, it's going to be very dangerous. But another thing to think about is sleeping. Now, sleeping costs 4 action points. So even if you're up here, you would go down to here, you would sleep. And what this allows you to do is move your fitness tracker out, because after this day in the preparation phase, this is going to move down, and you're trying to keep this up, because if it's ever here, you're going to get 2 less action points. So for example, if you were here at the beginning of the next preparation phase, the next day, this is going to move down, and now you're going to get 2 less action points. So during nighttime, it's good to kind of camp up, sit in the camp, spend 4 action points to move this, you know, hopefully it was here, you move it up, so you have another round before you're going to lose some action points. So all of it's very thematic. Now before I leave, let me just show you some of the other enemies. Again, this is an image that I used with my Google Translate camera, so you can you know, check out these enemies a little bit on your own. You can pause to see them for a little bit longer. And here are some items and gear from the loot deck and such that you can also look at. Again, this is from taking a picture with the Google Translate camera. Well, there you have Under Our Sun, and as I showed in the overview, you'll be cooperatively or semi-cooperatively exploring an open world, encountering enemies, building equipment, finding loot, and completing one of many different scenarios. Now, if you'd like to see the most up-to-date art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link directly below me in the description of this video. Now, that's going to take you directly to the crowdfunding project page, and I'm sure that Tabletopper Games would love your support.